वाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वती व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भागवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janamadasya Yato Anvayat Itarataschartheshu Bhikyasarat Tene Brahmaridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayah Tejo Vari Mridang Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Thamna Sena Sada Nirastakuhukam Satyam Param Dhimahi Dharma Projita Kaitavatra Paramo Niramatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayanamoolanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Pareirishara Sadhyarityavarutyat Atra Kritibi Shushrushuvi Tachanat Nigama Kalpataror Kalitam Phalam Shukamukhadam Ritadrava Sangyutam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhur Aho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 8, entitled The Character of Bharat Maharaj, text number 27. Please repeat. Tadanim Api Parshava Api Parshava Vartinam Atmajam Ivanusochantam Abhivikshamano Mriga Eva Bhiniveshita Eva Bhiniveshita Mana Visrija Lokam Imam Saha Mrigena Kalevaram Mritam Anuna Mrita Janamanusmritir Itaravan Mriga Shariram Avapa Tadanimapi Parshavavartinam Atmajam Ivanusochantam Abhivikshamano Mriga eva bhiniveshita mana Visreja lokamimam saha mrigena kalevaram mritam anuna mrita janamanusmriti itaravan mriga shariramavapa. Tadanim, at that time, api parshavavartinam, by the side of his deathbed, Atmajam, his own son, Eva, like, Anusochantam, lamenting, Abhivikshamanaha, seeing, Mrige, in the deer, Eva, certainly, Abhiniveshita manaha, his mind was absorbed, Visrijya, giving up, Lokam, world, Imam, this, Saha, with, Mrigena, the deer, Kalevaram, his body, Mritam, died, Anu, thereafter, Na, not, Mrita, destroyed, Janama Anusmriti, remembrance of the incident before his death, Itaravat, like others, Mriga Shariram, the body of a deer, Avapa, got. Translation. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Please repeat. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Purport. There was a difference between Bharat Maharaj acquiring a deer body and others acquiring different bodies according to their mental condition at the time of death. After death, others forget everything that has happened in their past lives. But Bharat Maharaj did not forget. According to Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tyajati anta kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tad bhav bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. After quitting his body, a person gets another body according to his mental condition at the time of death. At death, a person always thinks of that subject matter in which he has been engrossed during his life. According to this law, because Bharat Maharaj was always thinking of the deer and forgetting his worship of the Supreme Lord, he acquired the body of a deer. However, due to his having been elevated to the topmost platform of devotional service, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. This special benediction saved him from further deterioration. Due to his past activities in devotional service, he became determined to finish his devotional service even in the body of a deer. It is therefore said in this verse, Mritam, although he had died, Anu, afterwards, Na Mrita Janama Anu Smritir Itaravat, he did not forget the incidents of his past life as others forget them. As stated in Brahma Samhita, Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Cha Bhakti Bhajan. It is proved herein that due to the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is never vanquished. Due to his willful neglect of devotional service, a devotee may be punished for a short time, but he again revives his devotional service and returns home back to Godhead. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Unamili Tangyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. This is when it helps to have a good understanding of Bhagavad Gita, the ABCs, because what is happening now is a number of issues are coming together. One is the process of transmigration from one body to another. And the other is having performed devotional service in one body, but not to perfection. How they combine together. So it becomes confusing if you don't understand the principles enunciated in the Bhagavad Gita, because the tendency is to speculate and to try to understand this by our limited intelligence. Why it happens in the case of Bharat Maharaj the way it did, and why does it happen differently for another person. So it's not a question of reconciling odds, it's simply a combination of two different factors. Firstly, there is the principle of how you acquire another body at the time of death. So I'd just like to... Srila Prabhupada was very fond of explaining this many times. And I just want to go through two verses from the Bhagavad Gita, from chapter 13, and one verse from chapter 15. So please bear with me. I actually want to go through the purport as well, because it explains the process of transmigration of the soul. Now we have to understand that Srila Prabhupada is not speaking of Bharat Maharaj's story as a fable, as mythology. It is a fact. Because we don't have experience of, we don't even acknowledge that there is consciousness in life forms other than humans. We have a very biased understanding. And again, it comes down to mental speculation. So, of course there is life in all kinds of bodies. But how does this actually take place? Chapter 13, text 21. In this verse, Krishna tells Arjuna that there are two different causes for two different effects. Karya karanam kartritve hetu prakritir uchyate purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve hetur uchyate. Nature, Prakriti, is said to be the cause, the instrument of the existence of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause, the instrument, hetu, of his experiences of suffering and enjoyment in this world. So Prakriti, material nature, is the instrument of all the material going on. But the living entity, the Purusha, the soul, he is the cause of his own particular suffering and enjoyment. Srila Prabhupada writes, the 84 lakh different manifestations of body and the senses that come with them among the living entities are due to material nature. So the setup in which we go through is designed by material nature. They arise from different sensual pleasures and pains of each living entity who lives in the body given by material nature. So the provision of material bodies is by material nature, but the pains and pleasures of the living entity are his own. Now the sum total, body and the instrument of the senses, are offered by material nature, and as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. This is the law of nature. So, text number 22, the one following, is the verse Srila Prabhupada would quote to explain the actual transmigration. Purusho prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangasya sadasad joni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. This verse, Prabhupada writes, is very important for understanding how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. Number one, Prabhupada makes the point, the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another just as one changes his dress. Second point is this change is due to the attachment to material existence. So, Prabhupada makes the point, it's the association that you develop. He gave the example of contracting a disease. It incubates in the body and then it will take place. It's inevitable, it cannot be stopped. The association, contracting it, means the consequence will follow. So the process of transmigration begins with our association in this life with a particular mode of nature, with a particular association, with a particular person or an animal or a thing, an object or a desire. That propels the living entity into another body in his next life, suited to his association in the previous life. This is how it's happening. So, Prabhupada explains that actually this association takes place because the living entity has this ahankar, false ego, false identity of who he is. Because he thinks what he is, he does what he does. He likes the things he likes, he dislikes the things he likes. But that perpetuates his birth into the next life. Prabhupada writes, here it is explained how he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with different modes of nature. And here's the part which connects with Bharat Maharaj. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transmigrate from one body to another because he has material desires. But he has to change that conception. This change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this process of hearing, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. So then Prabhupada goes to text 15, chapter 15, text 8. Shariram yad avapnoti yad chapi utkramitishvaraha grihit vaitani sangyati vayur gandhan ivashayat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Text 9, chapter 15, text 9. Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grahanam evacha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, having come to be situated in his new body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. And that means that's how he enjoys a new body. So here, Bharat Maharaj has become a deer. He was a devotee, but he became attached. So this is demonstrating the pitfall of not being ananyas chintayantomam, undeviating. There is sometimes perhaps we become a little less serious in our Krishna consciousness, thinking my progress is okay. But there is still a danger. And the danger is that you will associate with certain modes of nature and they will propel you, they will force you into another body according to that association. So Prabhupada one time explained, the next time you carry on your Krishna consciousness may be after many millions of births. It's not, in the case of Bharat Maharaj, it was one deer and then again human. But it may not be so, because of your desires. And Prabhupada makes a very interesting point in the purport, that however, due to his having been elevated to the topmost platform of devotional service, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. So, in the case of Bharat Maharaj, it was a short duration. And there's an interesting mention here of the word Mrita Janma Anusmriti, the remembrance of one's life before this one. Mrita Janma, the body that has already been lost, dead. Anusmriti, remembrance of the body that's already passed away. So there are scientific studies showing that that children tend to remember sometimes their past life. But what happens is that because it's a little vague, a little hazy, the remembrance is not very clear. And as the child grows, the remembrance disappears. But in the case of Bharat Maharaj, even in the form of a deer, not as a human, he remembered everything. So this memory plays a very important role in devotional service, because Prabhupada says that because he did not forget, he, in the form of a deer, he was very strict about his behavior, his devotional service in the deer, as a deer. But because we forget, because a living entity forgets, he glides down into the path of repeated birth and death, because he forgets. He identifies with that body. He doesn't know. So this forgetfulness is very serious. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the pitfall of contemplation of the objects of the senses is that memory is lost. Because memory is lost, he falls down. In other words, it's very important to not lose your memory, to sustain, to remember. Because if you forget, you cannot continue with your program you left behind. So, neha abhikrama nashosti pratyavayo. So that abhikrama, that progress, if you forget, then you do not carry on. You identify with the new body and you go on through the cycle of birth and death. So here's a caution that the devotee, through the example of Bharat Maharaj, he should be very careful to not fall down, to be very disciplined by his mind. What he thinks of, what he meditates, what he feels and desires and wants, be very careful. In an earlier class, there was the question of whether he should have helped the deer or not when the mother died and the baby fell into the river. Question is, should he have helped the deer or not? I don't know if anybody asked that question to themselves. Just out of interest, did anybody ask this question in your mind? Should he have helped the deer or not? Did you? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4. Now another question, a follow-on. Do you have an answer? I'll be interested to know. Did you know what he should have done? Yes, yes. There's no mic, so just shout. Say it again, please. Okay, that's good. Thank you. That's a good point. But I just, in connection with the purport today and the significance of the mind, it's not so much whether he helped the deer or not, it's the state of his mind that was important. The mind, the yogi, he has to control his mind. He may help a deer, and that's not the point, whether he helps or not. But the state of the mind is the yogi's first and foremost business. To monitor the mind. And Mataji said he became attached. But he became attached because he let his mind do that. He contemplated, dhyato, oh dear. He became attached because the mind has 3 functions: thinking, feeling, and willing. First he had the thought. He indulged in the thought. Then he started to get feelings. He became attached. So everything became consequence. So the caution is, in the mind, to be careful of becoming attached to things other than Krishna, other than Krishna's devotional service. Bharat Maharaj was a perfect, so he just illustrates by his example the danger by just one little lapse. What to speak of a large lapse, internet and browsing and then, So a yogi, a devotee must be careful. Indriya yoga sanyamya. Yoga means to have the senses in control. And the foremost sense is the mind. Otherwise, Krishna says, karmendriya, if just your external senses are controlled but not the mind, then you become a pretender. And the earlier verse mentioned that Bharat Maharaj was feigning, he was pretending to do devotional service, while actually he was just thinking of the deer. So naturally, he thought of the deer at the time of death. Whatever you're thinking is what is the most prominent effect that determines your next life. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. That bhavam, that thought, whatever it is, yam yam, that's the determining factor. You can't say, for example, I was holding tulasi. Your hand was holding tulasi, but your mind was somewhere else. Your mind must hold tulasi. Because the living entity, Prabhupada writes in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, works with his mind and intelligence, not with the senses. He says that. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita itself says that very nicely throughout. So, the mind is the most important factor. And Bharat Maharaj overlooked that. So, general tendency when your mind is not in control is that your mind wanders, even when you're doing devotional service, such as chanting, japa, or any other devotional activity, reading, but your mind is wandering. So the training is to not let the mind wander, because if it does, it will force you into another body. And that's how transmigration of the soul takes place. So this is a sober thought here. At death, a person always thinks of that subject matter in which he has been engrossed during his life. So, the idea is to become engrossed in Krishna consciousness by my mind. And the process of sadhana bhakti is so designed that if you do it properly, your mind will be on Krishna. If you do it properly. That's why sadhana bhakti has to be done under training, because the teacher, he monitors whether you're doing it properly or whether you're just going through the motions. He monitors your mind. And there are ways to understand whether somebody's mind is wandering. So it's very important that we have come to Krishna consciousness, but we should also be careful that my mind is not secretly indulging in some material object or entity, material relationships. And this is the importance of Krishna consciousness done under rules and regulations. And it was mentioned in an earlier class that when you're doing your sadhana bhakti, if you have a higher taste, then your mind naturally doesn't wander. It likes to do the devotional service. It likes to chant. It likes to read, it likes to kirtan, to hear. So then, that's very good. The biggest blessing a devotee can have is to have a taste for his devotional activities, because now his mind is safe. One time, Prabhupada explained, devotees were wondering, what's the safest place to be? What's a safe place? It's today and also 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was the fear of nuclear war. What's a safe place to be? So Prabhupada said the safest place is on Sankirtan, because you're very absorbed. You can't do Sankirtan without being absorbed. Whether it is Harinam Sankirtan or book distribution, both of them require the devotee to be very, very absorbed, very fixed. And that's very good. And that's what we should look for, that quality in our own devotional practice. So, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? There's no mic, right?
There's one here.
Oh, good.
When you were asking your question about whether we ever thought about whether Bharat Maharaj should have said the Gita or not.
I'm not hearing, yeah.
I said you were asking if any of us ever thought about what to do, whether Bharat Maharaj should have saved the Gita.
Right.
So actually, that question was asked to Srila Prabhupada in another context. It was in Bombay in the early 70s, and one devotee, his name was Ramanujan, he asked Srila Prabhupada, if we see a drowning man, should we save him? And Srila Prabhupada replied, no. We have no business interfering in the actions and reactions of people's karma.
Jai.
But then he said,
very clear though. Go on.
Then he said, but there's another consideration called loka vichara, public opinion. That if we do not save the drowning man, people will say, just see, he's a devotee, he should have saved the man. That Krishna consciousness is rubbish, something like that. So he said, for that reason, we would save the drowning man.
Okay. Jai. Thank you. Nice comment. Any other questions or